the Sun's blunt reaction to today's interview given by the Duke of Sussex, in which he sensationally declared that he wanted a reconciliation with the royal family, but that the King won't speak to him, and he has no idea how long his father might have left to live. The Express picks up on the rift between Harry and the King, and it's an almost identical headline for their sister paper, The Star. And here's the Mirror, their headline, "Dad won't talk to me." Moving away from the royal news, the Eye describes Reform UK's performance in last night's local elections as a rout of Labour and the Tories that will leave their leader, Nigel Farage, dreaming of number 10. Those visions of Downing Street are also mentioned on the front of the Times. The Financial Times says the results represent a populist wave sweeping England, while the Mail calls it the Reform Revolution. And the Telegraph focuses on the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, which Reform won by just 6 votes. We're joined tonight by Leon Emirali and Christina Patterson. Welcome to you both. Well, let's start with the story that knocked the local elections off the top spot, and that is Prince Harry and this interview that he's given to the BBC. Makes the front page of the Sun and many of the other papers. Have you seen much of it, Leon?
I did, yeah, I did. I watched it earlier, and I have to admit, I was quite shocked by it. It was quite an interview where he was questioning how long his father's got to live, and he was questioning, his whole relationship with his dad, who's obviously the king. And I did find it quite emotional in parts as well. And the king not having a relationship with his grandchildren, I found to be a particularly emotional part of it. And I have to be honest, I'm not sure what Prince Harry wanted out of it. I'm not sure what his motivation was out of this because, as we see, it's not a great set of front pages for him, and I don't think public opinion shifted in his favour at all.
But in the interview, he said what he wanted is reconciliation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure this is gonna help him get that. I think that Buckingham Palace have come out and said, well, they have responded, which is quite unprecedented in itself, and obviously outlined the issues relating to security. But I don't think that this is necessarily going to bring him closer to his father or to the rest of the royal family. I think it's just another chapter in what is quite a sad story of Harry and his relationship with his family.
Christina, what do you think of the headlines like that The Sun's Harry's lost it? Is that unfair?
On balance, I think probably not, actually. I was very moved by the interview. I thought it was, not because I think he's right, just because I think the whole situation is incredibly sad, and he's clearly absolutely grief-ridden about what has happened. And to be going on national and global TV saying essentially that he doesn't know if he's going to speak to his father again before he dies is a desperately sad situation. And to say that he doesn't feel he can bring his children to the UK. Now, whether he can is a whole other deal. There are plenty of famous people who don't get taxpayer-funded protection who manage to bring their families to the UK. So, I think in his head, he has taken this incredibly personally, and he holds the king responsible, and he sees that as the main source of the rift between them. Of course, we don't actually know from the other side because King Charles is never going to speak personally about that. But Harry said at one point in the interview, I don't know if they can forgive me. They don't seem to be able to forgive me for writing a book. It's not that he wrote a book, it's that he wrote an absolutely explosive book that was an absolute betrayal of his family and said things that were pretty much unforgivable. And in that interview, he said he has forgiven his family. Well, many people would think the forgiveness is not really on your side. You may feel it is, but the things he has said about almost every member of the royal family, including actually implicating the late Queen Elizabeth, were really shocking. And however strongly you feel sympathy and compassion for him, and I really do. I think, I think Harry was very popular in this country. He was fun, he was energetic, he did his army service. He was a breath of fresh air. I think it's really, really sad what has happened to him, but I don't think this is the way to address it. And in his head, he clearly thinks he is 100% right, and he has given no ground at all. He has not tried to tread in the shoes of the other members of the family, who must be feeling totally devastated by what they will have seen as a series of betrayals. So I think it's just very, very sad, but I don't think this is going to achieve anything positive.
Leon, the Sun, describing it as Prince's furious TV rant. It wasn't a rant, was it?
No, I do think he's been treated a little bit unfairly by the front pages. I mean, the photos they've used of him on the Mail in particular, teeth gritted. It wasn't an angry interview. It was an emotional interview, I'd say. Yeah, it wasn't.
Let's bring
furious.
up the Mirror as well.
It certainly wasn't furious in tone. I didn't feel, but it was shocking, and it was quite jaw-dropping. And I think that for Prince Harry, you know, he was advised to do this by his director of communications at the foundation they'd set up, Archwell. From a PR point of view, I can't see the value that this brings to his objective. If it is reconciliation, if it is, you know, that police security, I don't think this brings him any closer to it. I actually think it brings him several steps further from it, and that's a difficult thing for him to reconcile. And you know, people are saying it has whiffs of the Prince Andrew interview with BBC Newsnight all those years ago. I don't think it's that bad, but I do think it was ill-advised, and I do think that, well, I feel sorry for him more than anything, because he's clearly feeling it emotionally on a human level, on a personal level. I feel sorry for the guy, but I do think on a PR communications level, this was a misstep.
And Christina, he's washing dirty laundry in public again, because, you know, we didn't know that the King wasn't speaking to him. Well, at least that's what he says.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't know if that's true.
Well, I assume it's true, or at least I assume that Harry thinks
We've
that
only
that's
heard one
what's
side
happening.
then,
Well,
haven't we?
exactly, and you're absolutely right about the washing dirty linen. But I do think, sadly, it's likely that there is a kind of Californian influence here, which is that he has lost. I mean, he was a very English guy. You know, he was very kind of public school English. You know, jolly hockey sticks. And
What do you mean by the Californian influence?
I think the whole world that you know, people like Oprah Winfrey, you know, that whole sense of you know, kind of speaking about your emotions and looking at your truth, and you know, their whole brand has been based about self-revelation and confession, and you know, revealing other people things that other people have said in private. That is much more normalised in the culture they are in now than it is in kind of British upper class culture, and I think it plays incredibly badly with members of the royal family, and it's totally the opposite of Queen Elizabeth's ethos, which was essentially, you know, never complain, never explain, always keep things private. And he's done exactly the opposite. And I think members of the royal family, and in particular the King, have been completely blindsided by it. They don't know how to respond to this because it's never happened before.
But the royal family itself is moving in that direction of being more open, though. aren't
They
Because,
are
for
being,
instance,
but
we know that
in a
the King has cancer.
very
We never would have known that about
in a
him.
very measured, calibrated, careful, Instagram filtery kind of way.
The Express front page, and this is the thing that perhaps has upset most people, is he said he didn't know how long his dad might be around.
Well, that's extraordinary. You know, when we think of the royal family's openness, as you say, Gillian, but on things like health, I mean, you know, they are still quite guarded, and we didn't know the Queen Elizabeth was dying until it more or less happened.
Until Liz Truss finished her off.
Well, indeed. But I think, you know, that to say that publicly, I can see why that would have caused friction between him and the King, because you know that isn't the way things should be done, and it isn't the way things have been done. So I get why that's peeved the King, if you were, and the King's frustrated at a lack of respect, is what the Sun have said on their front page, and I think it is a lack of respect. I think there has to be a level of hierarchy that. A, he's the King, B, he's your dad, and I think there has to be a level of respect there that's in play that clearly isn't. And I think from a public point of view, Harry has left the royal family, he isn't a working royal. Exactly as Christina says, there are lots of wealthy, high-profile people who pay for their own security, and you can't have it both ways. And unfortunately for Harry, it just feels like this rant is, well, I know it's not a rant, but the public airing of laundry is just continuing, and there's no end in sight. And when does it end? How does this end? You know, that's what I don't get in my own head, and I don't think anyone else really understands.
And also,
that.
I think I think in Harry's head, he thinks he is still living a life of public service. I think he thinks he is still a kind of member of the royal family.
He said that. He said that in the interview. Yeah.
But that is just not the case.
No.
And, you know, when you see, you know, I was ill the other day and I watched the first episode of Meghan's With Love, Meghan. And, you know, trust me, this is not a life of public service. I'm not sure what it is. But, you know, making TV programmes about jam and podcasts about, you know, your inner truth or whatever.
That's her. That's not him.
Well, it's
And we
both
need
of them
we need
actually.
to
He is
separate
essential.
the two.
He is a central part of her brand. I mean, he talks about Harry sort of padding around, not doing very much. That does not sound like a life of public service.
I think it's interesting with Meghan because she has withdrawn from the UK public space in quite a significant way, which I think has actually been a good idea.
Well, it's understandable as well.
And it is understandable, whereas Harry hasn't done that, and his detachment.
Well, he described it as his homeland.
And it is his home, and I get all that, but he's not a member of the royal family anymore.
Liam and Christina, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Much more coming up, including on any other day. Reform UK's remarkable gains in last night's local elections would have been the top story for every paper. We'll turn our attention to that after the break, so stay with us.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky Security and Defence Editor.
The reality of life under Russian fire.
People don't want to leave even though help is here to evacuate them. They say they want to sort out their belongings first. It's absolute chaos.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety as Russian drones will be trying to find this position.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming. I've been covering Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
When rockets fall, I try to hide my head under my toys.
Illustrating Ukraine's lost childhood. Hopes and dreams framed by war.
Conflict in the Middle East is another major focus.
An incredibly dangerous moment.
We saw the missiles streaking across the sky. We saw the intercept going up, and then we saw the explosions when the intercepts were successful. With global threats rising, I also explored defence and security in the UK and across NATO.
This US aircraft carrier is operating in European waters in a deliberate show of force.
This is routine training for NATO, but should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Tucked away in the National Archives are some of the UK's old defence plans.
The scale of this bunker underlines how seriously governments took the threat of nuclear attack and global conflict. Should allies listen to Vladimir Putin's sabre-rattling?
No, they shouldn't, and they don't.
Sky News, the full story first.
Date 1945, the day of victory in Europe.
Hostilities will end the 8th of May. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing.
80 years on from that historic moment, we will be at the heart of the events as we reflect, remember and celebrate together. Join us for the full story of VE Day on Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Leon Emirali and Christina Patterson. Right, so let's turn to what would have been the massive, huge story of the day, and this is the local elections and reforms performance. The Daily Mail headline there, the Reform Revolution. Nigel Farage saying that it's the end of two-party politics as we know it. Leon?
I don't think it is the end of two-party politics, but I think that one of those two parties might have been replaced. I think that we might see Reform replacing the Conservatives. I do think that is a real risk. Clearly this was a good night for Reform, a good set of results for Reform. How this translates into a general election scenario that's 4 years away, I'm not all that sure, and I think it's got very difficult to speculate for various reasons, not least the length of time. But there's no denying the public are fed up with two-party politics, the two traditional parties, and there's no denying that Reform have done a very good job of making themselves an attractive prospect for a lot of voters. And I think that Nigel Farage does deserve credit for that. As a political operator, he is exceptional. I think now the challenge is going to be, how do you translate that campaigning excellence into governing excellence? These councils that Reform now has to lead, what does that mean in terms of Reform's record? Because it's very easy to say, you guys are doing it all wrong, here's how we do it better. Now they're going to have to defend their own record, and I think that is going to be difficult for Farage. But I see why he's happy, and I see why the other two parties are terrified, frankly.
Actually, that's one of the things that he said he was daunted by in an interview with our political editor, Beth Rigby, that, now they have to deliver. And these councils, which, many of his Reform candidates will never have gone near in terms of running and have no experience, they now have to actually govern and deliver. So he realises the enormity of the task ahead.
Yeah, well, it'll be fascinating to see how they do. I mean, he's talked about wanting to have Doge-type cuts in councils. There is absolutely no evidence that people in the UK want Doge-style cuts. I mean, the Doge-style cuts in the US have been an absolute disaster, and they haven't even saved any money, but they've certainly created chaos in public services. Doge-style cuts mean less social care, less bin collections, fewer bin collections. I think they will find it very difficult to balance budgets. Also, a lot of what councils has to do is mandatory. They have to provide social care. They have to provide care for children. They have to provide all kinds of things. They don't get a choice over that. You can't just slash that. So then you can only slash the optional stuff, which is then, or the so-called luxury stuff, like cutting bin collections, which is, as we've seen in Birmingham, is incredibly unpopular. So I think it will be really interesting to see how people who run on protest actually run something that is not glamorous at all when it comes down to it. And I think this will be the beginning of Reform transforming from a party of protest. Of course, at the next election, it will still have the luxury generally across the country of being a party of protest, because we are only talking about a few councils and a mayoral. Is it one or two? Two mayors, isn't it? And the mayors don't exactly run the ship. So it will be talking about councils. But I think, as we know, governing is extremely hard. The main reason that the Tories are in such a state is not because Kemi Badenoch is a really unimpressive leader, though I don't think she is an impressive leader. The main reason they're in a state because they had 14 years. We had 14 years of them running this country, and a number of those years were pure chaos.
Let's see if we can try and get another paper in, Leon. If you take us to the FT, and they're looking at whether this is the start of a populist wave sweeping England. We've got Nigel Farage suggesting that I believe we will win the next election. Nigel Farage for PM.
Yeah, and I had a look at the bookies before I came here, and he's odds-on favourite to be the next Prime Minister. So, that isn't beyond the realms. But as I said a minute ago, we are 4 years out from a general election. Local elections don't always translate to a general election outcome. And I was reminded, when I was looking at some of the previous election results, in the 2019 European elections, the Conservatives got 9% of the vote share. They then, 7 months later, got an 80-seat majority in Parliament. And OK, it was a different leader and it was a different set of circumstances, but that's how quick politics moves.
Yeah.
So is this the beginning of a populist wave? Potentially, yes, and I wouldn't necessarily rule out Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. I think it's
Okay.
more the
We're
likely.
going to hold you to that. You've said that on tape, and we're going to replay
I've heard a
it.
few people say that. I would have to
we must
shoot
wrap it
myself
there.
if that were the case, but let's hope not.
Let's take a look at the weather, much more in the 11 o'clock hour.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, after the recent hot spell, the weather will turn cooler this bank holiday weekend, typical. But apart from a few showers, it remains largely dry and sunny. It's a little chilly first thing under clear skies with some fog patches, but for most it'll be a dry start. However, a few showers may affect English Channel coast as well as northern coasts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Otherwise, Saturday is set to be a mostly fine and sunny day with earlier showers fizzling out.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, Prince Harry gives a bombshell interview following defeat in his Court of Appeal case over security provisions. Full details coming up next.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.